Okay, we are back to the preview for Chapter 6. This is the part 2 of that video. Hopefully you stood up and stretched and went and got you a drink or took a break. And you're back ready to watch some more, or maybe you did some homework. When we left off, we were talking about foiling. Remember, x times x became x squared. X times a positive 2, negative 8 times x. Let's remember the x, Cindy. And negative 8 times 2. Put together the middle terms using those little rules for combining that we talked about. The signs are different, so we subtract, take the sign of the larger number. What we want to start with here are the exponent rules. That's what we used here with the x times the x to get the x squared. If you took the 307 class, this was in Chapter 5, and you have the book, so if you need to look back for any of this, you do have the book. So what I want to review now are the exponent rules. The first one is what we just used, the product rule. X squared times x cubed equals x to the 5th. If we expand this, we can see that we just added those up to get the 5. So what we need to do here is add the exponents to get our answer. We have the quotient rule, which with quotients we are dividing. So if I have x to the 8 over x to the 5th, I could do the expansion again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then whatever's top and bottom crosses out, it becomes 1. And then we can see that we're left with 3. So our answer here is x cubed. And what we can do to get our answer is subtract the exponents. The power rule, we will use it a lot too, and it can be confusing with the product rule. The power rule you want to make sure you see the difference. For the power, I have one variable and two exponents. X squared raised to the power of 3. If I expanded it like I did earlier, that would be x squared 3 times. And if I use the product rule, because we're multiplying, 2 plus 2 plus 2 equals 6. Or if I look at where I started, so what we want to do here is we want to multiply these two exponents. To get our answer. We also have the 0 rule. So let's say x to the 0 equals 1. 3 to the 0 equals 1. My name in parentheses to the 0 power equals 1. So for the 0 rule, anything to the 0 power equals 1. This might be a time for us to just take a little side note and remember that our exponents affect what they touch. So -3 squared and -3 in parentheses squared are two different answers. Here, the 2 only touches the 3. Here, the 2 touches the parentheses. That means everything's included. So this is 3 times 3 is 9, and then we bring down that negative. But here it's -3 times -3, which gives me a positive 9. So just a little side note about the exponents there. The last rule is the negative exponent rule. If you have a number with a negative exponent, or a variable, or whatever, what we're going to do is change locations. And change exponent sign. By locations, I mean the numerator or denominator. That's what I mean by change locations. So let me show you how this works. If I have x to the -2, x, if it was a whole number, it would be written over 1. So the location change would take it to the denominator and make the exponent positive. Now it's a fraction, so you have to have something at the top. So if there's nothing else to put here, you put a 1. So let's see, if I have 2 to the -3, that means the 2 is going to go to the denominator, the 3 becomes positive. We'll put our 1 here, and then we finish it. 2 times 2 times 2, this would equal 1/8. If I had, let's say, x over 2 to the -3. Now the x will stay where it is in the numerator, and the 2 will come up, and the 3 will become positive. And we just did this math, so we know this is 8x, and there's nothing in the denominator, so we can drop that fraction line and just go straight to this answer. So remember, if it has a negative exponent, we're going to change locations. We're talking about the numerator or the denominator, and change the exponent sign. So if it was negative in the numerator, it'll be positive in the denominator. Negative in the denominator, positive in the numerator. We will use some of this knowledge that we've learned about the exponent rules to do division. If we have division by one term, what we want to do is separate into fractions and reduce. So this is our problem to begin with. We're going to rewrite it, putting it over the denominator. then we will reduce. So let's look at the numbers in each. And you might want to keep the sign in mind here too. It may be that you have a negative in two places that you'd have to take care of that. So 15 over 5 is 3. That's a whole number. The quotient rule said I could subtract, so 5 minus 3 is x squared. 10 divided by 5 is 2. 4 minus 3 is x to the 1, and we don't put it. It's there, but then I'm going to get rid of it because I don't need it. Plus, the 5's become 1, and so does this. When you do the math, 3 minus 3 is 0, and anything to the 0 power is 1. And I already have a 1, so 1 times 1 just leaves this 1. And then here, notice I don't have a number at the top to help reduce with my 5, so the 5 stays at the bottom. When I look at my quotient rule, 2 minus 3 means I'm going to end up with x to the negative 1, which I can't have a negative exponent. So then this is going to have to move and go to the bottom. And then we'll have our placeholder of the 1. Another way to look at this situation is to find the location of the largest exponent. And that's where your answer is going to end up. If we say that my largest exponent's in the denominator, then go ahead and put the x in the denominator, then do the subtraction. And this is how we get x to the 1. In the 307 class, we spent a ton of time, most of our semester, solving equations. So we want to review that now. The first thing we can do is if we have fractions or decimals, we can eliminate those. We will practice this later in chapter, I believe it's chapter 7, because we'll be dealing with fractions. But the other steps are very simple. I made up this little way to remember it, and so hopefully it will help you. The first thing we need to do is distribute. We've already talked about that today. That involves multiplying. The C is combine like terms, and we've already talked about that today also. These two are the same. The V is for variable, C is for constant, and what we're going to do, we're going to move the variable or the constant, or maybe both, depending on our equation, to the other side. Move the variable or constant or both to opposite sides. And then the F, we're going to finish. And when we finish, we want to get the variable alone. So I want to go back here. We're going to multiply here to distribute. Combining like terms, we're talking about on the left side, then the right side of the equation. The moving involves, we want to do the opposite, that inverse, and we will be adding or subtracting. The finishing I'm going to get the variable alone. Again, we're going to do the opposite, the inverse, but this time we'll either be dividing or multiplying. Now, I use this format in my face-to-face class, and so I tell them, don't call my mama fat. Hopefully they get a good laugh out of it. I'm hoping that they'll notice that D, C, M, M, F, distribute, combine, move the variable, move the constant, and then finish the problem. So let's see how this works. I have an equation and I don't have any distributing to do. So what I like to do is I like to write down the little checklist, and you can do the V or the C in any order, doesn't matter. I don't have any distributing to do. There's no combining on the left or the right. I have a variable here and a variable there, and I need to get them together. So this is where we are. We're going to do the variables. So I want to do the opposite. I want to subtract. I need this to cancel. What I do to one side, I do to the other. Now I'm ready to finish. When I'm ready to finish, you want all your variables on one side and the constants on the other. And you're going to do the opposite. So here I am going to divide by 5, divide by 5. X will equal 2. A fairly simple equation, but it shows how we use these steps to solve it. You always want to check your work. So in the checking, go ahead and start with your original equation. Substitute in what you said X is. So we're saying here that X is 2. Multiply, add. Over here we just multiply. And when these two numbers match, then we know that this answer is correct. Let's look at another one. This time we're going to do a problem where we do need to eliminate the denominator. Now let me change that to black. Okay, I hear the groaning. I can hear it all the way up to MCC. Most of my students don't like fractions. I hear it all the time. And I understand they can be a little bit difficult, challenging. We don't like them, so we avoid them, so we really don't learn how to handle them. What we want to do here is we want to get rid of the fraction. So let's find the LCD, the least common denominator. Well, it's right here, 3. If we had to work with the fractions, we would use 3 as our denominator. We can get rid of the fractions if we take and multiply the whole thing by 3. So we would have 3 times negative 4x plus 3 times 8/3 equals 3 times 7/3. Negative 12x plus 8 equals 7. Here, the 3 at the top and at the bottom, they cancel. This 3 is like it's over 1. 3 at the top, 3 at the bottom, you know, 3 over 3, that equals 1. So I get rid of the fractions. We are going to use this method again in chapter, I believe chapter 7. So we want to be sure and practice it now. But now everything's whole numbers. I'm going to move that 8 over. I'm going to subtract 8 from both sides. And then to get rid of this 12, I'm going to divide by negative 12 on both sides. The two negatives that I have here and here will become positive. And then, even though I got rid of the fractions to do the work, you still can end up with a fraction as an answer. All right, that's all we're going to do in this section. This should get you started. If you have any questions, email me. It's hard doing a math class in an online setting, so it's very helpful if you'll take the time to send an email to me. The best way to do that is in my math lab. In your homework, there will be a button that says Ask My Instructor. That's the best way to handle questions to me. It sends me the problem, and you don't have to rewrite it. Okay, hope you have a great day. Please get to your homework as soon as you can. And then, like I said, if you have any questions, email me.